everyone, welcome to our presentation. Today our group can talk about the report Living Beyond Our Means, Nature Assets and Human Well-Being made by Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. As we all know, everyone in the world depends on nature and ecosystem service to provide the conditions for a decent, healthy, and secure life. Therefore, United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan called for the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment in a report to the General Assembly titled We Are the People, the Role of the United Nations in the 21st Century in 2000. The goal was to analyze the consequences of ecosystem change for human well-being, as well as the scientific foundation for activities needed to be improved, the conservation and sustainable use of such systems, and their contribution to human well-being. More than 1,360 professionals from the world contribute to this assessment. Their results on the condition and dynamics of ecosystems, future scenarios, feasible responses, and global evaluations are presented in technical chapters structured around these four premier themes. So, as human civilization become more complicated and technologically adapted, it is tempting to believe that we are no longer relying on nature systems. However, look at this picture at the right side. There are different combinations of service provided to human populations, provide the various types of ecosystems. Their ability to deliver the service depends on complex biological, chemical, and physical interactions, which are in turn affected by human activities. So, we might have separated ourselves from nature, but we rely entirely on the benefits it provides to the lives on the earth for 6 billion inhibitions. So, at the most basic level, the food we eat and the water we drink are service of nature. The nutrition we observed depends on the nature infrastructure underlying the skills and technology of farmers around the world. Even with the creation of many synthetic materials, natural resources are still needed in huge amounts in every societies. Trees provide us with wood and paper. The fashion industry requires plant and animal fibers, and natural medications are in ever-increasing demand. While the value of the most of these products will be fairly easily calculated, many additional natural resources do not appear numerically, but they are equally essential for the modern economics. Their actual value is often realized only after they are gone. For example, at the graph on the right side shows the worth of the forest, which measured only by the timber and fuel the trees generated in the past. However, higher figure includes service such as control of the climate through absorption of carbon dioxide, protection of freshwater resource, and recreation. Because many of these services are not bought or sold in markets, they are frequently lost or degraded even though their value to human societies is huge. And take a look at the left side. The graph demonstrates the net benefits from the more sustainably managed ecosystem are greater than those from the converted ecosystem when measurements include both marketed and non-marketed service. Even though the private market benefits will be greater from the converted ecosystem, but we can definitely see the long-term benefits for the sustainability. I think it's time to learn some facts about our ecosystem based on the change of human activities. Humans now use between 40% and 50% of fresh water running off land, to which the majority of the population has access. Water withdrawals from rivers and lakes for agriculture, household, and industrial was doubled in the last 40 years. and more land was converted to cropland in the 30 years after 1950. Since about 1980, approximately 35% of mangroves has been lost, while 20% of the world's coral reefs has been destroyed and a further 20% was badly damaged. Human activities now produce more biologically usable nitrogen than is produced by all nature processes combined, and more than half of all the manufacturing nitrogen. The flow of nitrogen to the ocean has doubled since 1960. Although the rate was declined since then, the damages still remain in the soils for decades before entering the wild environment. At least one quarter of marine fish stocks was over-harvested. The quantity of fish caught by humans increased until the 1980s, but is now declining just because of the shortage of stocks. In many sea areas, the total weight of fish available to be captured is less than a tenth of that available before the onset of industrial fishing.
The development of human societies has been a story of changing the natural systems of the planet to sustain ever more simplistic and comfortable ways of living and ever greater numbers of people. Yet throughout human history, no period has experienced interference with the biological machinery of the planet on the scale witnessed in the second half of the 20th century. The report divided the ecosystem change into three parts. The first one is re-engineering the planet. Between 1950 and 1980, more land, such as forest and natural grassland, was converted to cropland than in 80s and the first half of 19th century combined. Nearly a quarter of the land surface of Earth is now cultivated. The amount of water taken from rivers and lakes to irrigate fields to meet the needs of industry and to supply households has doubled since 1960. In just 2 decades, it is estimated that people have removed more than one-third of the world's mangroves. The full consequences of the pressure are still poorly understood, but a recent study estimated that 90% of the total weight of large predators of the ocean has disappeared in modern times. The second part is moving species. A species introduced from outside can dramatically change the local system and the service it provides. For example, the arrival of the American combo jellyfish in the Black Sea led to the destruction of 26 commercially valuable stocks of fish. In many cases, however, it has been an accidental impact of the accelerating human links across the planet. The change with greatest potential to alter the natural infrastructure of Earth is the chemical experiment. Humans have been conducting the atmosphere for the past century and a half, which we could conclude by changing the climate. Nature has always adopted the change in climate, but this shift is likely to pose unprecedented challenges to its resilience. The anticipated speed of climate change is greater than anything seen for at least 10,000 years, making it far more difficult for species to move to more suitable areas or adapt to the new conditions by evolving new survival mechanisms. An outcome of all these changes has been reduced significantly the variety of species that can be found in many individual areas and on the planet as a whole. Ecosystem surveys are the benefits people obtain from ecosystems, which the ME describes as provisioning, regulating, supporting, and cultural service. Ecosystem services include products such as food and fever, regulating services such as climate regulation and disease control, and non-material benefits such as spiritual and aesthetic benefits. Change in these services affect human well-being in many ways. And the report focuses on the balance sheet. On the credit side, three of the improving surveys reflect the worldwide efforts to keep food supply ahead of the increase in population. Total food production increased by about 2.5 times, while the number of people in the world doubled from 3 billion to 6 billion between 1960 and 2000. Some of the clearest evidence of the pressure we are putting on the nature comes in surveys such as wild fish and fresh water. Up to a quarter of the water supplied to human communities is being used in a large quantities that local river systems can provide. To make up for the shortfall, supplies either must be transferred from other regions or from underground sources that cannot be replaced. In either cases, current water consumption is only able to continue by shifting the problem to distant communities and natural systems, or to future generations. The assessment also found the deterioration of a wide range of natural services essential to the function of human societies. The protection provided to people by natural systems against extreme events is in decline. If natural systems were well understood and behaved in a predictable way, it might be possible to calculate what would be a safe amount of pressure to inflict on them without endangering the basic service they provide to human beings. Even if this change cannot be predicted, the scientists involved in the assessment conclude that our current behavior makes it likely to more will occur in future.
So the article states that the people lacking minimum standards of human well-being are generally those most vulnerable to the deterioration of natural system. People living in the dry regions often suffer more than any other parts of the population from problems such as malnutrition, infant mortality, and disease related to contaminated or insufficient water. The supply of water in dry regions comes mainly from sources such as groundwater, instead of recharged by rivers or rain, and is not sustainable in the long term. Poverty and degradation of nature can combine into a downward spiral. Poor communities are often left with fewer options to conserve their natural resources, leading to further deterioration of the land and even greater poverty. In many cases, it is the poor who suffer the loss caused by the pressure on natural system to bring benefits to other communities. The benefits of dams, for example, are mainly enjoyed by the cities for electricity and water, while the rural poor can lose access to land and fishing. Large-scale deforestation in areas such as the Amazon is driven by demand for timber and paper far from the forested area. Yet it is indigenous people who feel most keenly the disappearance of natural services that the forest provides. The negative impacts of climate change fall disproportionately on the poorest parts of the world. For instance, by increasing drought and reducing food production in dry areas. But the buildup of greenhouse gases comes overwhelmingly from richer populations, and they consume more energy for their higher living standards. While wealthy economies can more easily afford engineered alternatives to natural services, such as artificial flood defenses to compensate for the changes made to riverbanks and wetlands, the cost of such measures can place a heavy burden on public expenditure. Loss of natural services in poor regions can also put high financial and political stress onto the international community, either through increased disaster relief or the migration of refugees. Then the report gave us options for the future. First is just some possible future scenarios. The global population is projected to rise to 8 to 10 billion by the middle of the century, with the biggest growth concentrated among poor urban population of Middle East, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South Asia. Increasing population exacerbates pressure on natural system. The conversion of land to agricultural uses continue to be the main factor influencing change in biological diversity, but in some regions, other factors become increasingly important in coming decades. The buildup of nitrogen in rivers and coastal waters, for example, rises sharply in developing countries with serious consequences for human health, fisheries, and habitats. Climate change also has a bigger influence on the services provided by natural systems, heightening the risk of species extinction, for example, increasing the incidence of both drought and floods, and making hydroelectric power less reliable. In fact, important improvement in efficiency has been introduced, but these efficiencies are outweighed by the fact that more people are consuming ever greater quantity of goods and services, so the total toll on natural system continue to grow. This is not a matter of rising population alone, but also of lifestyle changes among those enjoying greater prosperity. Thus, we have to seek a better way. An important part is to correct the historical bias that existed against natural services when weighing the costs and benefits of economic choices. A large number of natural services are treated either as free or with no reflection in their price of real cost of using them. Policies that acknowledge the true cost of obtaining natural services can steer consumers or businesses into more efficient behavior. For example, water charges that reflect the actual environmental impacts of an individual user will tend to make people think more carefully before opening the tap. New opportunities are emerging to put a price on services previously assumed to be free. For example, the Kyoto Protocol creates a market in greenhouse gas emission credits, in fact raising the right to pollute and creating new incentives for cleaner technology and forest conservation. New opportunities exist for companies prepared to pioneer less wasteful technologies that preempt the trends in public policy. For example, minimizing water and energy use or recycling waste material can position a business well for the future demands of society. Consumer preference for products obtained responsibly from nature system can also reward companies that are discriminating the supply of their goods. It can provide a positive competitive advantage through consumer labels such as those on organic foods and the forest stewardship conceal mark. Experience shown that these efforts tend to be much more effective when local people are given actual stake in the benefits from conservation. If profits from ecotourism or the harvesting of forest products are shared fairly with local communities, for example, people are less likely to turn to wildlife poaching or to farming methods that destroy the natural fabric of the area. Aid programs for developing countries should prioritize the protection or restoration of natural services to bring long-term benefits. International negotiations on issues such as trade rules can have far-reaching impacts on pressure on natural systems, and they need to be coordinated more closely with other conventions and treaties aimed at protecting the natural environment. Achieving this, however, will require radical changes in the way nature is treated at every level of decision-making. And then there are several key steps that are available to reduce the degradation of ecosystem services. The main idea are to change the economic background of decision-making, to improve policy planning and management, to influence individual behavior, and to develop the use environment-friendly technologies. So here the question 1. Due to many ecosystem services are now traded in markets fail to provide appropriate signal that might otherwise contribute to the efficient allocation and the sustainable use of services. Water and air, for example, are freely available. Even if people are aware of the services provided by an ecosystem, they are neither compensated for providing these services nor penalties for reducing them. A wide range of opportunity exists to influence human behavior to address this challenge in the form of economic and financial instruments. So the question is, what are the economic instruments and market mechanisms that might enhance the management of ecosystem services? And please give an example and explain how it works. Here's the question 2. Review the key steps available to reduce the degradation of ecosystem services. Which of these points do you think would be most helpful to reduce the degradation of ecosystem services in the future? Please state your opinion or suggest a specific policy or program that you think would be work, or find a relevant example that has already been implemented. Thank you for watching.